Okay, so it's 12 o'clock sharp, and I'm going to go ahead and get started because I know you are all moms and your time is precious. I appreciate so much you being here and joining us today. Just to introduce myself, I know most of you I've spoken to already, but just in case I haven't gotten a chance to introduce myself yet, I'm Sunshine Hansen. I'm 38 years old, and I too am in San Diego, California. I am a mom of two. I actually have a 21-year-old and a 6-year-old, so I feel like I'm raising two only children over here. And I'm married to my husband, Kyle, for the past 15 years. And I created Surrogacy Is as a way for moms to learn more about surrogacy and to just kind of find out if it's right for them, if it's something that you're considering. And you just want to learn more about the basics. And really, there's just so much to know. And there's only so much you can find out by Googling. And so I know it's kind of a sisterhood. So those of us who have been surrogates before, we really like to hold the hands of other women who are just getting started and walk you through all of the details, because it's a pretty involved process. So surrogacy is definitely not for everyone, but for those of us who are right for it, it's life-changing stuff. I am on my third surrogate pregnancy right now. Actually, I'm just 8 weeks and 4 days with a little girl that I'm carrying for the same family that I just delivered for last year. And if you had asked me 5 years ago if I would be in this position today, I would not have believed you that I would be a surrogate more than one time. But in being in this industry for a little while, I know several surrogates, and I don't know a single one of us who's ever just done it one time and not gone on to do it again, because we've had such amazing experiences. So that's kind of how I got into this field. I started my career off as a high school English teacher, and then I started after my first surrogacy journey doing marketing for an IVF doctor that I really love in Oceanside. And then I've worked in intake for a larger surrogacy agency and as a case manager for a smaller agency. And I've gotten to know a lot of the different agencies around the US, and they are all very different. Some of them are much more wonderful than others. Some of them I wouldn't refer my worst enemy to. So that's kind of part of what I do too, is help people get connected with the best agencies. So that's my background a little bit. And what I want to go through with you guys today is the basics of what makes a good surrogate. What the general basic qualifications are, and really the character and the temperament too of what makes somebody a good surrogate. So let's see if I can skip to the next slide. There we go. The first requirement, I'm going to hide myself from you so we can see the whole slides there. At least I can shrink. First and foremost, a qualified surrogate is a good mom first. And I know there's lots of ways to become a mom. I know I've adopted a child, and I've given birth to my own child, and I've had children for other people too. But a surrogate, as requirement number one, has to have given birth to her own children and be raising her own children in order to qualify for surrogacy. And the reason for that is that pregnancy is complicated, and not everybody can carry a healthy pregnancy. And you don't really know that until you've gone through and delivered your own children. So you know how pregnancy affects you, how it affects your body, how it affects you emotionally. And not until you've done that on your own are you ready to go forward and do that for someone else. So that's requirement number one. One thing that surrogates need to be aware of, for one, is if you are not finished having your own children, there's always a possibility with pregnancy all the time that something could go wrong and that you could potentially lose your fertility as a result of any pregnancy. Those risks are really, really slim, but they are real. So it's very important that you consider that before you enter into a surrogacy journey, knowing that you're comfortable with the size of your family as it is. One of the things I like to explain to people too is the mom that I'm caring for, she really wanted to have a big family, and she only was able to deliver her daughter when she had an emergency that led to her losing her uterus. So she was devastated, and in order to have the big family that she wanted, she now has to have a surrogate. She has to have my help to carry her children. So if that's something that would devastate you, I would recommend not entering into surrogacy until you're already satisfied with the size of your own family, because you just never know what could happen. The other thing is your pregnancies need to be uncomplicated. So if you've ever had any major complications like preeclampsia, gestational diabetes that required medication, or if you had severe postpartum depression after a pregnancy, that puts you at a much higher risk for experiencing those complications in a future pregnancy. And that's a risk for your health and the health of the baby. Surrogacy is all about minimizing risks and achieving the goal of a healthy baby and a healthy you to go home to your respective families. So if you are one of the unicorns who had smooth pregnancies and deliveries, then you would meet that first requirement and would probably make a great surrogate. Okay, the second major requirement is the age requirement for surrogacy. It's actually a pretty big window between the ages of 22 to 39 to qualify for surrogacy. And I know 39 seems on the older end for childbearing, but a healthy woman can carry a pregnancy well into her 40s. Even her 50s is not unheard of. I know last year there was a grandmother who carried children for her daughter who was infertile. And she was, I think, almost 60, and she carried and delivered a healthy pregnancy. So for women, I know our fertility window is kind of narrow. It's much more narrow than it is for men. But although our egg quality diminishes significantly as we get older, our uterus has a pretty long life. So there are some IVF doctors who will accept surrogate candidates up to the age of 42 if they've delivered within the last year or two, or if they've been a surrogate before. But most doctors don't recommend starting the process as a first-time surrogate over the age of 39. So if you're getting up there, like me, I'm 38, I'm coming up to the end of that window for myself. On the flip side of that, 22 being the youngest, the reason for that is, well, for one, needing to be done completing your own family first. Most women are not done building their own family by the age of 20, 21, but there are some agencies that will accept candidates as young as 20 or 21. It's just very rare to have achieved the level of stability that you need and to already be done building your family at that age. That's not to say it doesn't happen. I have a good friend who had her 2 kids really back to back when she was very young. She was already married and had 2 kids by the time she was 21. So she was a surrogate for the first time at 21. So it happens, but it's rare. The third requirement, and this one's a little bit trickier, and this is the one where you know in your life where you're at in regards to your work-life balance. I know work-life balance is one of those things that we're all chasing forever, probably until we die. So I don't know if we ever really feel like we've achieved work-life balance. But just to kind of give you an idea of what I mean, when I became a surrogate, I was teaching full-time. I had been teaching for about 5 years. I had a good stride in my career. I had supportive colleagues. My husband was a team player. He always has been. And I had friends that were able to lend a hand. My older child was a teenager already. I hadn't adopted my youngest one yet. So I had kind of a good support system in place. I had people that were happy to lend a hand in any way that I needed, even if that was just having friends that would go through parent profiles with me and go through all the waiting and getting excited about milestones with me and listening to me vent when I was moody or hormonal. But if you have small children, it's really important that you have a support system and you have options in place of people who can help you with childcare or pick up and drop off. There's always a chance in a pregnancy that you could be required to go on bed rest. And if that were the case, if you have small children, it's really important that you have people in your life that you could rely on that would help you pick up all the extra slack. Also, if you have a lot of appointments to go to, children are not able to attend appointments at fertility doctors with you. So you definitely need to have childcare for that. So making sure that you have people, not just one person, but 1, 2, or 3 people that you can rely on that you really trust with your kids, that is really important. You will be reimbursed as a surrogate if you ever need childcare for an appointment or for anything. The parents will reimburse you for childcare, and that doesn't come out of your compensation. That's something additional. So if you miss time off work or if you have to have childcare, you'll be reimbursed for your lost wages and for the cost of childcare. But if you have a job that if you miss a lot of work for appointments, if that's going to hurt your career, it might not be the right the right time for you. So that's something to consider. Yeah, so a schedule that can accommodate frequent appointments, reliable childcare, and a supportive spouse or partner or family that can help you with the extra laundry and things that you need when you don't have the energy. I know right now I'm about 8.5 weeks along, and I am not able to do all, like, I'm kind of the person around the house who takes care of all the laundry and, you know, the grocery shopping and all the things, and I need a lot of extra help right now. So my husband's picking up a lot of extra slack for me because honestly, I just feel lazy, like I want to nap all the time. So the other requirement, which is also kind of general and vague, is that you must lead a healthy lifestyle. And that's not true only during pregnancy, but in the months and years leading up to a pregnancy, you need to have a healthy lifestyle because your body's going to be hosting a little visitor that needs a healthy place to grow. So as you know, when you were probably preparing for your own children, you started taking prenatal vitamins even before you were pregnant and eating healthier and making sure you get exercise. You need to have a healthy BMI, which is between 18 and 32. And BMI stands for body mass index, and it's determined by your height and weight. You can look up your BMI on a BMI calculator online if you just Google BMI calculator and find out what your BMI is. It's a broad window between 18 and 32. You don't have to be like a fitness model or anything. You just need to not be too overweight or too underweight. And the reason why is because a higher BMI or a lower BMI, it increases risks of miscarriage and other complications. There's also medications that you have to take for IVF that are required, and they're based on body weight, and they don't work as well if you have a higher BMI. You have to fit within that window for the medications to be successful for you. I don't know if you're aware of that, even with birth control. If you have a certain, if you're over the maximum threshold for BMI and you're using birth control pill or Depo-Provera or something, it won't work for you. You're likely to become pregnant accidentally. So that's something I don't think gets talked about enough for women with our doctors, but keeping your BMI in a healthy range is really important. The other obvious thing is you need to be free from tobacco and recreational drugs, not only during pregnancy, but leading up to pregnancy. So if you are a person right now who casually uses recreational marijuana, if you're in a state where that's legal, that's something that if you're really considering surrogacy, you'll need to stop right away. And if you casually smoke tobacco, that's also something that you need to stop right away. And you need to be open once you get connected with an agency and letting them know that this is your history, but that you're no longer using these substances. Any other substances would probably be disqualifying if you're using any other recreational drugs or substances. The other thing is, let's see. Yeah, so regarding the cigarettes thing too, I know I had spoken with someone recently who she said she really wanted to be a surrogate, but she smokes, and she's like, I smoke about 10 cigarettes a day, which, you know, fine. But if you want to be a surrogate, that's not something. She's like, oh, well, I'll stop when I get pregnant. But I don't know if you've ever known anybody who's a smoker, or if you're a smoker, people don't just stop. It's not an easy thing to do. So it's definitely something, if you're thinking about doing, at least 6 months prior, you need to be free from tobacco and recreational drugs before you get started. And once you start IVF medications, you'll also have to refrain from using alcohol. So once you start your IVF medications, no more wine with dinner, which is sad. And that's where I'm at right now. I never thought I'd be going through a pandemic and all this madness that we're going through and having to not even be able to have a glass of wine, but here we are. Sir, just so you know, surrogates are tested for nicotine and drugs periodically throughout the screening and monitoring process. So it's not something you can kind of get away with if it's something you wanted to. I'm sure nobody would even do that, but just so you know. The other thing is you need to be in good physical health with a good health history. So if you've had any physical health conditions, such as a history of cancer or liver disease, or if you've had any chronic mental health conditions, such as bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder, those things make surrogacy a much higher risk for you. There are medications that you need to take that you'll need to be taking to maintain your wellness that wouldn't work with a pregnancy. And also the hormones that they give you for IVF, they're really can be a problem and can be triggering if you have bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder. So it's just not worth it to risk your own well-being to help someone else if ultimately it could do harm to you and your family. So that's the reason why those things are disqualifying. If you have experienced situational anxiety or depression, or mild postpartum or baby blues or anxiety after pregnancy, and you've had to take medication in the past. I know for me, I had some mild postpartum anxiety after my first surrogate journey, and I did take Wellbutrin for a little while, and then I had to be off of it for 6 months safely with a doctor's note before I could go on to do my next surrogacy. So those things are really common, and they don't mean that you're not going to be a good candidate or you wouldn't do well with IVF. So that's okay, as long as it's not a major and chronic condition. And then the final requirement is financial stability. And financial stability, what that means is that you need to be above the poverty line. You shouldn't currently be qualifying for or receiving government assistance. And in some cases, I think especially right now, with the state of the economy and the way things are, there are a lot more of us who are qualifying for Medicaid or food stamps than might otherwise be. So agencies are being a little bit more lenient with this particular qualification than they have been in the past, as long as you are financially stable and that you wouldn't be depending on the compensation for surrogacy to make a living. I know the compensation is a huge benefit. It's a major perk, and it was a big part of the reason why I first looked into surrogacy, because it was going to be really helpful for me and my family. I had student loans. I had a kid that was going into college. I had to help buy a car. I had, a lot of things going on. So it was going to be really helpful for me. But the compensation does take a long time to come in. So while you're going through the screening process and while you're going through your IVF cycle, there might be expenses that pop up that you have to cover that will be reimbursed at some point, but not right away. So you won't even start receiving the base compensation for the surrogacy until heartbeat confirmation of pregnancy. And pregnancy, as we all know, is a really uncertain thing. Chances are you might not become pregnant on the first try or the second try. So if you don't have the financial stability to allow you to do things like miss work for an appointment, if you miss a couple of hours of work, or if you have to drive farther in a tank of gas or a lab bill or something like that would really set you back and put you in a bad position, then surrogacy isn't going to be a good fit for you at this point. That's not to say that it won't in the future, and it can be, but if you're living in financial dire straits, like many of us have, when I was a single mom at some point in our lives, when you're in that type of situation where having to come out of pocket for a lab bill or missing a shift at work and waiting to get reimbursed for those lost wages would really put you in a predicament, then you're not financially stable enough to become a surrogate, and that's okay. You just need to be in a position where you're comfortable waiting for reimbursements and compensation. And the compensation for surrogacy will come in eventually, but if you're waiting for that as your means to survive or to fund your lifestyle for your family, then let's wait, and surrogacy will be here when you're ready and your life gets more stable. So those are the basic general requirements for surrogacy. And, whatever has initially piqued your interest in surrogacy, if it's the compensation, that's a well-deserved perk for women who decide to dedicate their time and their bodies to carry a child for someone else for a year. It's a beautiful gift to give someone. So however you decide to use that compensation, whether you're going to sock it away for your kids' college fund, or you want to take a year off work and be home with your kids while they're still little, or even if you just want to fund your mommy makeover and take a vacation, as soon as the pandemic is over and we can travel again, that's okay. You earned it, and that's awesome. So I think a couple of things that some of you might want to know, if you already know that you meet these requirements and you're ready to move forward, you want to get started right away. You've already taken my quiz to see if you meet the basic requirements. Some things that you'll need to know that might slow the matching process down for you, or some agencies might take your application, some agencies might not. I work with several agencies that I refer to that have different levels of requirements or types of surrogates that they're looking to work with, and that might accept somebody, for instance, who is currently qualifying for food stamps that wouldn't normally, but is not in financial hardship necessarily. But there are other agencies who wouldn't make an exception under any circumstances. The same with the BMI. I know some of us are on the higher end of a BMI. I do know some agencies that will accept a BMI up to 34, whereas others won't accept a BMI over 30. So if those are situations that you have, those are things I'll work with you with to help you make sure you don't waste your time applying for agencies that won't accept you, and I'll help you get connected with an agency that meets what you're looking for and is looking for a candidate like you. So if there are some things that you have in your profile that might slow down your matching process, some of those things might be a history of minor complications in your pregnancy. So for instance, if you have gestational diabetes, but you weren't required to take insulin or any medication, you were able to keep it under control with diet and exercise and still went on to have a full-term healthy delivery, that wouldn't disqualify you from surrogacy, but it might make you a little bit harder to match. Or if you've had multiple C-sections, some doctors only want to have surrogates who've only had vaginal deliveries, whereas others are okay working with surrogates who've had up to 3 C-sections as long as they have a clearance note from a doctor. Also, when you go through your psychological evaluation, if there are any signs or indicators that the psychologist gets that your home life or your work life is not stable or not in balance, or if it seems maybe that your partner's not fully supportive of the idea, then those are things that would slow down the process for you. Really, if you want to get an idea of how quickly you can match, just try to put yourself in the shoes of intended parents and think, if you had to trust a stranger to carry your baby, that's the ultimate act of trust. What are the things that you would want to see, and what are the things that might discourage you from choosing a certain candidate? So things that will speed up your process. Once you have made the decision, you meet the requirements, you're ready to move forward, I get you connected with an agency, you feel really good about them. The most important thing is that you be on top of all the paperwork, because they're going to give you a lot of paperwork that's going to help you request your medical records, and all these things take time. There's kind of a lot of hurry up and wait that happens in surrogacy. So whenever the agency communicates with you and asks you to do something, it's important that you take care of that task and send it back to them, put the ball back in their court as soon as possible. Don't sit on things, because it really can drag out the process for you. Any agency that I refer to is going to be awesome with communication. They're always going to be responsive to your phone calls. They're always going to be responsive to your emails, whether they answer immediately or within 1 business day. And you need to do the same. Make sure that you're responding to phone calls right away, you're returning voicemails, and that you're responding to emails within 1 business day. Make sure that you have the support of your family, you have a clear support system in place, you talk to the people in your life and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to carry a child for someone, and I might need some extra help out. Would you be able to help me with that? Whether you have in-laws that live nearby, or friends in the neighborhood who are also moms that you pitch in and help each other out. Just make sure you have a good support system in place. If you are one of those people who have had perfectly uncomplicated pregnancies and all vaginal deliveries, then people are going to be really interested in your profile quickly. So you'll probably have a lot more options for matching, and a perfect health history with no conditions requiring prescription medication. So for instance, if you have hypothyroidism or something that requires medication, that wouldn't disqualify you from surrogacy, but it might just make it a little bit more complicated. So if you are a person who doesn't have any of those issues, then matching is going to happen a lot more quickly for you. So I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to go over with you guys today. I know this has been a shortish webinar. Hopefully it was informative for you. The big takeaways I just want to make sure you guys have out of this is that being a surrogate and carrying a child for someone is a really big deal. It's a really big gift, and it takes a tremendous amount of trust for someone to select you to be their surrogate, and the relationship that you'll get from that will be so rewarding. I have 2 families that I've helped that I adore, and one of them is in Australia, the others are here in Los Angeles, and I I never could have imagined how rewarding this process would be. I went into it because I needed some extra financial help, and it changed my life so much more than I could have imagined. So it's a big deal. And if you decide to do this, I'm going to be here to support you all the way. And you'll totally earn the compensation that you get. It's a big gift that you're giving. And the other thing is that it's really important to wait for the right time in your life. Make sure that you're stable, you have everything in place for you to have a successful and smooth journey. But it's also important not to wait for too long, because I know 22 to 39 is a big window, but it closes so fast. And I wish that I had known about surrogacy earlier when I was a little bit younger, because honestly, I probably would have gone on to do this several more times, which sounds crazy. I know, being pregnant again for the third time with someone else's child, but I don't know anyone who hasn't gone on to do it more than once. And if you wait until you're 37, 38 to get started, it might just be one time, and then that's it, which would be beautiful too. Do you guys have any questions for me about the process or anything that I've talked about? Hopefully I didn't go too fast over everything. Don't be shy. Okay, well, that concludes everything that I had to cover. I'm going to hang around for the next 15 minutes or so. So if you want to hop on the chat and ask me any questions specifically about your situation or about surrogacy in general, I'll be here until the next 15 minutes or so. So feel free to shoot me any questions, and I will just sit here and wait. Thanks, Elena. I'm so excited for you. Good. No questions? Okay. Ooh, I have a question for you guys. My next webinar topic that I want to do is about the things that I wish I'd known before becoming a surrogate. So some of the things that have caused some hiccups for me in the process, or things that I wish I could have avoided. So I'm going to do kind of a stuff I wish I'd known, things that can go wrong, like pitfalls to try and avoid. That's my next webinar I'm going to host pretty soon. What are the other things that you would want to know more about in a thorough webinar? Would you want to know more about the compensation breakdown, how it's delivered to you? Would you want to know more about the legal process or the IVF and medical process? What would be some topics that would be helpful? all of the above. IVF, yes. Okay. I have a good friend who's an IVF nurse, and I'm hoping that she can hop on too, so she can talk through the potential medications that you might be taking and what their purposes are, and how to give yourself injections. I don't know if you guys have looked into that process at all too. That's something that we have to do as surrogates, is injectable medications. Okay, all of the above, Rebecca, you got it. All right, well, I'll make sure you all get an invitation to the next one. Thank you guys for joining me. You're so welcome. You guys are so welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your day. You're welcome, Vilma. See you at the next one, Becca. Okay. No more questions then? You had a bad connection on the first topic. Let's see, what was that? Let me back up to the beginning. The first thing 𝗰𝘁 was talking about really was just my my background and kind of how I came to be here. But the other thing I was talking about was being a mom and having, so the first major requirement is that you've already delivered your own children and you've had successful pregnancies, full-term deliveries without complications. So if that's the case for you, I think I probably took a lot longer time to say that than it really needed to. But yeah, just having had a healthy full-term delivery with no major complications and being done completing your own family. So if you have one child like me, I only had one biological child, and that was all that I wanted to have. So I went on to adopt in the future, but that was a totally unexpected story for another time. But yeah, being satisfied with the size of your own family too is important. Making sure that you're done having your own kids before you carry kids for someone else. Does that cover it? Is that what you missed, 𝗰𝘁? Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. Have a beautiful day. I know we're coming up into the weekend finally. Take care. Feel free to reach out if you need anything at all. I'm going to pop a link into my calendar too for you guys if you want to schedule a time to talk with me one-on-one at some point. And I will send a recording of this to everyone so you can review it. You don't have to memorize everything we talked about. Okay? Let's see, I think that's my calendar. Okay, I'll email you a link to this recording, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, there's the link to my calendar.